Virginia 69, Duke 62. What a snoozer of a basketball game last night in JPJ. It's Chris Graham, Scott German here. Nothing eventful coming out of that either afterwards. I mean, no statements from the ACC or anything. Boy, Scott, I got to say, to me, and we talked about this on the phone a few minutes ago, and so we'll just kind of recapture some of that magic and even add more to it. But to me, that controversial ending is the best thing that I've ever seen in my life. Duke got screwed, and the world feels. I feel like I woke up in a different world this morning than I went to bed in, or that I woke up in yesterday, I guess.
Why would you feel that way?
Oh, I don't know, because for 40 some years, the world was tilted in such a direction that all the bad calls that would determine the outcome of a game benefited Duke. And it's not just us. The rest of the ACC is like, hey, it's a brave new world out there.
Yeah, Chris, we talked off the air. I think yesterday was probably one of the most, I don't know, impactful days that the ACC has had in basketball in a long time. In that, what happened at the end of the UVA game, the statement released later last night by the ACC, pretty much says the days of bullying on the sideline and intimidation is over.
Yeah.
You know, to me, and I've seen, I counted it up last night. I haven't missed a Duke Virginia home game since 1983. And I've seen good Duke teams demolish us. I've seen bad Duke teams beat us. I've seen us we were on the other end of that.
Yeah. 1997.
1997. There's one other, I can't remember the exact date, but I think it was, are you talking about the substitution? Was that?
Yeah. The Norman Nolan, Willie Durst substitution game,
Right.
1997.
Right. But you know, you can flip the script and you can put a lot of teams in that's had that experience against Duke. Not just Virginia isn't the only, school that's been on the other side of that coin. Carolina certainly has. There's other schools too. So I think you're not going to see a whole lot of tears being shed for Duke around the ACC, and I think that's a good thing, because now if John Shire is going to make it at Duke, he's going to have to make it on his own, or he's going to have to come up with another. Ralph Sampson played 47 minutes in a 40-minute game to work that to his benefit.
Yeah, and what I'd say to UVA fans out there, I made a rare act of scanning the message boards and the social media. I don't do either much these days, but I wanted to get a pulse on what the UVA fans were thinking. And there's so many people who are, in fact, I'd say 95% or more of the folks out there are trying to argue against the fact that it was a bad call. And we'll talk more about the call, but I still want to talk about this aspect of it, that it was it was not a bad call, and here's X, Y, and Z and A, B, and C as to why that's the case. And I'm just saying, lean into it, because and I'll give my thoughts on this as to why it was a bad call, and I'm glad it was a bad call, and probably why it's two, in this case, two wrongs actually do make a right. But as far as all that goes, yeah, this is something where, for 40 plus years, Duke basketball under Mike Krzyzewski, with Mike Krzyzewski at the helm, I should say, I guess, bullied the league into seeing things its way, and that Duke basketball, what was good for Duke was good for the ACC, and it to a point where, yeah, not just Virginia, everybody else out there in the ACC felt like, man, come on, at some point. Like last week, Duke and Carolina played, got the primetime spot on an AC Saturday, two unranked teams. It's a few years past. I know they both made the Final Four last year, surprise runs for both. But the last ACC team to win a national championship is Virginia, not Duke, not North Carolina. Those two teams are unranked. They're way underperforming. and yet they still get the spotlight. So, maybe it's appropriate that last Saturday those two schools still get the spotlight. This particular Saturday, last night, Virginia, the torch has been passed. Let's just say, and I'm not saying Virginia's going to get all the bad calls go their way like Duke did for 40 years, but we'll take one.
Yeah, we'll absolutely. So I wore my UVA hat for a reason, because there's no secret we're UVA fans, probably among the best. We cover the team, but I think we do a fair job. One of us especially is not afraid of criticizing the administration, coaching, the custodial staff, the food vendors. I'm gonna take this hat off. The reason I wore it, I'm gonna take it off, and I'm just gonna go back to just trying to be unbiased here. And Chris, I think what happened, we're overcomplicating this, is that, and I said it to you last night, the refs blew that whistle wishing that they could have taken it back, because you cannot. I've looked at that play probably 100 times. I've freezed it, looked at it. It is just too debatable to have to call a foul and let a game that was played at that intense level, and those two teams just battled each other for 40 minutes, to let a game come down to that would have been just a crime. And I believe that was the beginning of it, is that they realized, hey, we can't let this game end like that. And it didn't end. That call did not decide the game, because they played 5 minutes afterwards.
Yeah.
And if you look at that 5-minute stretch of that 5 minutes, Duke was horrible. Duke committed 4 turnovers, just took some bad shots, forced some shots. Duke became unnerved, and you would have thought Duke would have came out of that huddle with a chip on their shoulder, and they did not. They came out like the little kid that got punched in the mouth and went home crying to his mother.
Yeah, Duke was 2 for 6 in the overtime.
Now I'm going to put my hat back on. So.
Duke was 2 for 6 from the field in overtime, 0 for 2 from 3, 0 for 1 at the foul line. You mentioned
they were horrible.
4 turnovers, 7 fouls. I mean, they weren't fouling to stop the clock. I mean, they were at the end a little bit, but the bulk of those fouls were turnover type fouls, offensive fouls, charges, sloppy play as far as that goes. For the most part, it's interesting. This was such a weird game. Virginia shot 51.9%. Duke shot 44.9%. Duke, uncharacteristically, they were a 32.6% three-point shooting team coming in. They ended up 9 of 23. They cooled off late from 3. First half, let's see. I'm going to pull these numbers up here. First half, Duke was 4 of 9. Second half, 5 of 12. I mean, this is, again, a team that shoots 32.6%. They were making shots that they don't normally make. Out-rebounded Virginia 39-24. Virginia shot 9 of 22 from the foul line, I should say. And, all those stats pretty much add up to a Duke big win. One stat that didn't work out, 22 turnovers for Duke in this game. Virginia, a 20-8 advantage in points off turnovers. Duke, a team that gets a lot of points in fast break and transition, no fast break points last night. So all these things pulling you in different directions. Virginia, if Virginia makes free throws, they were 3 of 12 in regulation from the foul line. If Virginia goes 9 of 12, which they're close to 75% shooting team, 10 of 12, Virginia wins the game maybe by double digits when you factor it all in, because Duke would have been reduced to fouling at the end. So either team could have claimed, hey, we were, 7 to 10 or 12 points better than the other team, the way things played out last night, and just didn't work out our way. But, I like what you said there, Scott. Yeah, the game didn't hinge on those fouls. It's not like Virginia was up 1 and won by 1 point because the refs took 2 free throws away from Kyle Filipowski. Right. It was a tie game. They had 5 minutes to play. Duke did not play well in those last 5 minutes. And I know we want to talk in depth about the actual call. It was 1.2 seconds of last night's 45-minute game. But, Give me your perspective, Scott. Give me your perspective on those 1.2 seconds.
Wow. My perspective is that Duke ran a good play. Filipowski took the ball to the rim.
Well, okay. Let me interject. That was let me throw in. I watched. I had the game on in the background while you and I were talking on the phone. I was finishing up a column. The rebroadcast on ESPNU, and so I was seeing on a big screen when I was looking at it on a little screen last night, because I'm like you. I watched the play 100 times. One of the many replays, there are multiple fans sitting right behind the inbounder, Tyrese Proctor, holding up their hands with a 5, signifying 5-second call. I've seen it measured anywhere from 5.2 to 6.8 seconds that he had the ball, depending on when you start your clock, and it should start when he's handed the ball. There's one Twitter, I actually linked to the Twitter video of this. The stopwatch started when he smacked the ball, which is what a player does to signify to his teammates we're starting to play. But the clock wouldn't start. I mean, you're the 5-second mythical clock that a referee wouldn't start when he smacks the ball. It would start when he was handed the ball. So that's why I say there's a discrepancy between 5.2 and 6.8 seconds. Ryan Dunn severely overplayed the pass. Filipowski cut out towards the 3-point line, and Ryan Dunn tried to steal the pass. And that's what allowed Filipowski to have the lane to the basket. So I wouldn't even give Duke credit for running a good play. One, they were at least 0.2 seconds beyond a 5-second violation, maybe as much as 2 seconds beyond a 5-second violation, and just got lucky that a freshman overplayed the passing lane.
Yeah, when I mean a good play, I'm saying, do you think that taking the ball to the rim was a better choice than trying to free someone up for a shot? Because taking it to the rim, you do get the opportunity of maybe drawing a foul.
He was only able to take it to the rim because Ryan Dunn overplayed the pass to the backcourt. Fundamental mistake and nobody's talking about this because we're so focused on the foul or no foul call. Fundamental mistake by Ryan Dunn. That you've got to keep yourself between the guy you're guarding and the rim. With 1.2 seconds ago, he's not a danger at the 3-point line. Let him throw up a 3-pointer. Do not let him get between you and the rim. That's what Dunn did. So, we love the freshman. He's very athletic, good player, got a lot of potential in the future for Virginia. But that was an awful defensive play by him.
Yeah, and he certainly has the experience that. I mean, he's not Filipowski, who, has been one of Duke's leading scorer, I think.
But he's also a freshman who had no points last night.
Who had no points.
But he get back to where you were. He gets to the rim. He gets to the rim. And here's the thing that really, I think what Filipowski did, and I listened to a podcast this morning by Tyler Hansborough. He pretty much played his way back into college again next season. I think that entire Duke group of one and dones played their way back into college.
Yeah. And that could be bad news for the rest of the conference, because if you can't take that ball and flush it, and you let a 6'3" guard get up there with you and impede your pass to the basket, your shot, then you're not ready for the NBA.
Well, you say bad news for the rest of the conference. I say bad news for John Shire. He's already recruited another one and done class next year that may not have scholarships available if these guys don't leave. And Scott, I didn't see a guy out there last night on the Duke side that looked like they were NBA, anything more than a future NBA journeyman. Certainly not a first-round pick in this spring's draft. Yeah,
if someone takes a Duke player in the first round, it's basically because they don't need him to come in and perform right away.
Yeah. There might be a couple second-round picks in that group, and no first-round picks in that group.
Yeah, but you don't make any money in the second round.
No.
Ask Kyle Guy. But
so he
that's
took it
what
to the
surprised
rim.
me is that he just did not flush that ball home, and that Reese was able to get up there and done too.
Well, but so Reese is the one who met him at the rim, and I watching the play from so many different angles. Reese was down there guarding. I'm trying to think. He was on a guard I mean, he was, he was staying with his man under the bat. He happened to be under the basket with his. So Duke's man ran him into the block, which is another that young man's fundamental mistake, running a defender into the lane to even be there. So Beekman 6'3", Filipowski 7'1". Watching it live last night, I didn't think. I mean, I thought Dunn had to have been the guy to block the shot because from where we're sitting up in the press area, all you can see is young African American man with tall hair, and I'm thinking, there's no way. I mean, so Dunn, great job, Dunn blocking that shot, and then to see the replays when I get home, and it's Beekman at 6'3" blocking the shot. Dunn's contribution to the play was the contact after the shot was blocked. And that's where the whistle came in. The whistle wasn't on Beekman. And I think, certainly those of us in the arena were confused as heck at everything going on. And we don't have Dick Vitale and whoever the play-by-play guy was last night telling us and showing us multiple replays of what's going on. All we have is what we saw live with our eyes and then the big screen, but no one in our ear telling us what's going on. So the foul, I guess, I mean, it obviously would have been called on Dunn. Now, this is where things get complicated. So the shot was blocked clean by Beekman. In fact, in the scorebook, he's officially credited with a blocked shot. Whatever contact there would have been clearly happened after triple zeros. A triple zeros 0.00. How many ever zeros you want to put up on the scoreboard? That's how many zeros there would have been. Whatever contact there would have been after that. So the refs go to the side now. So here's what we'll say: we're in the arena, Scott. We were separated at this point. You had already gone down towards the tunnel to start the post game stuff. I was up with one of our good friends, Lawrence Johnson, and he was sitting there on press row. And Lawrence asked me, so Chris, I'm saying the only thing they can be reviewing is whether or not anything happened before the clock went out. And he's saying, well, can't they challenge the call? No, the NBA has that rule where you can challenge a foul call and get a foul call overturned. You can't do that in college yet. Maybe you should, but you can't challenge a foul call yet. So, but we're in the arena last night. We didn't know what was going on. Nobody's telling us all that stuff. So they overturned the call. Now, okay, thoughts now, Scott, on overturning the call, because I agree with you. The first mistake was calling the foul in the first place.
Overturning the call, I think, just basically boiled down to, maybe I'm too naive on this, maybe I'm too whatever you want to say it. I believe the officials felt like, and they may have known the rules, Chris, that they were going to get reprimanded. But I believe the officials realized we should have never blown a whistle to begin with. We're going to overturn the call.
Only one of the three blew a whistle. The other two were signaling game that regulation had ended. One official, the baseline guy, and I don't have his name. We saw all three names. I just don't know which guy that was. But only one of the three officials called a foul. The other two were signaling game over. And yeah, then they've got to go review that. And I agree with you, Scott. I think that. So this is where I say two wrongs make a rare case of two wrongs making a right. The first wrong was calling the foul in the first place.
That's where it all started.
That's where it all starts. Yeah. If the whistle doesn't blow, then Duke can say, "Oh yeah, there was contact and all this kind of stuff." There's contact on every play. That
happens every play.
Every play.
It just happened that it happened on the very last play. Yeah. That happens at the 13-18 mark of the first quarter, at the 7-minute mark of the second half. Those plays happen. If you're down on the floor, and I was down on the floor towards the end of the game. Yeah. My gosh, it's a completely different game than it is from up in the stands. They could call, the game would still be going on. They run out of players. They can't call every single contact play, and you should not call a foul in that situation that they know would determine the outcome of that game.
So I'm with you as well on the officials. So they're using and they go to the replay. The only thing they can do is try to determine if the foul would have been called before the triple zeros. And honestly, not even that, because the way the ACC worded its correction last night, the ACC cited three different sections of the rule book saying that even if So even Beekman does get the block, but because a whistle was blown on contact on Dunn, even though the contact was after triple zeros, it's still part of the play, even though it's after triple zeros.
It's kind of like continuation.
Basically, yeah, like continuation. The ball is, even though the clock is drained, the ball is still in play until the ball hits the floor, I guess, or goes out of bounds. And so you can't overturn a call. You can only so they when they went to the replay, they weren't even looking to see if it happened after triple zeros. They were only looking to see if there should have been any time left on the clock for Virginia. And there wouldn't have been, as it turns out. So, but I think what they did, and I think they knew what they were doing.
I believe they did too.
Yeah, that they realized when they looked at that, oh my God, there is no foul here. There is not anything to call a foul on. Clean block. Contact was after what, and the contact did not create an advantage for the defender. Should have swallowed the whistle. Can't undo swallowing the whistle. So what we're going to do here is, and I think also it's very possible they were there for a while. It's also possible that the sideline official who blatantly missed the 5-second violation on the inbounds, they could have taken all that into consideration and said, okay, one, Duke got the ball in at least a fraction of a second late, probably as much as 2 seconds late on the inbounds. And then two, we should not have blown the whistle on calling a foul on the block at the rim. So if we give Duke, who got the ball inbounds late after what should have been a violation, and then give them 2 free throws on what's not a foul, we're doing much more harm that way than if we simply say we're going to go to overtime. Let the two teams fight it out. That cascade of errors by us, 2 officials involved in screwing that up. One official screwed up not counting to 5, and the other official screwed up by blowing the whistle. If we allow that to give Duke this win, that's a much more egregious violation than if we let them play 5 more minutes and determine it that way. That's that. I think, but that's 2 wrongs making a right, though, because by the letter of the law, they can't do that.
Exactly, and that's what the statement by the ACC indicated. So 2 things I want to make a note of or talk about. If that call had been somewhere during the game and it was a bad call, then that would have been maybe gone down as a bad call. We've had this conversation before that I had a conversation with a very well-known ACC official from the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. And I asked that official, is there a such thing as do makeup calls really exist? And this particular official said, you bet your sweet ass they do. But the objective is to correct a wrong as quickly as possible. In other words, if an official knows he made an incorrect call early in the second half, late in the first half, whatever, you try to correct that as soon as you can.
Within a possession or 2, really. Within a
possession or 2. And we've seen it. We
saw it last night 3 or 4 times, and we've gotten to a point, Scott, just so folks out there know.
We call the fouls ahead of time.
We tell each other, yeah, that was a makeup call. I mean, because there will be a touch foul called on somebody, and there it is. It's a makeup call.
And if viewers want to know, does it really exist? It does. I had an official tell me it does. The objective is to call it quickly, to get it out of the way, to even the playing field up. This was sort of like a makeup call.
Yeah, because they didn't have another play.
They didn't have another play.
So they had to make it up right away.
End the game. This did not end the game. This simply sent it to overtime and allowed each team to go back to their bench, regroup, and the team that wanted that game the most was going to win that game. And it was very obvious from the stats you just released of what Duke crapped the bed in that 5-minute overtime.
And you're right. I mean, if I'm John Shire, if you're John Shire, anybody out there listening and watching is John Shire, after that, you're telling your guys, you're getting them in that huddle. You got 3 minutes before the jump ball to start overtime. You know the time to get out there, and you're fuming. I mean, Coach K would have been doing this. His veins would have been popping out. His eyes probably would have been bulging out of his head, red in the face. He'd have been talking about how he would have F this, F that. We just got screwed.
Staring the refs down at the same time.
Yeah. Oh, and
Knowing
every
that
call would have
every
gone their
call
way.
in overtime was going to go Duke's way.
Yeah, exactly. And his guys would have gone out and dominated the overtime. Shires did not. And so it was getting to a point there. So the call is what it is. It's overturned, two wrongs making the right in this case. I'm saying, I'm seeing out there the sentiment on the social media, the message boards. I talked about this at the top. Folks arguing against it. Also, folks raising the objection. Why did the ACC even put out a statement? That just shows that this is biased against Duke. Honestly, I wrote a column. You wrote a column last night, Scott, and then after the ACC statement, I wrote one late last night. It's why I'm, didn't get a lot of sleep last night in a good way. But we all remember, at least the old timers amongst us, remember the 1997 Virginia Duke game in U-Hall. I co-wrote a history book on U-Hall. We wrote an entire chapter of that book on the last 4.8 seconds of that 1997 game in U-Hall. Virginia was just to set the scene there to remind folks or inform folks who maybe aren't of age to have known. You've heard about 1997, and here's what it was. Score was 60-60. The roles were reversed that year. Duke was number 6 in the country, and Virginia was on the NCAA tournament bubble. Virginia's 8 this year, and Duke is headed towards the bubble now after last night's loss. So it was 60-60, 4.8 seconds ago. Norman Nolan at the foul line for Virginia. Norman Nolan, for those who are not the older fans, Norman Nolan was a 6'8" power forward, scored a lot of points. Big guy, big burly guy. Great player for Virginia back in the day. So Virginia's coach at the time, Jeff Jones, who's now at ODU as the head coach. Jeff played at UVA, coached under Terry Holland, and then took over and had a good run there for a while. Jeff Jones was out of timeouts. So 4.8 seconds ago, free throw shooter on the line, no timeouts. So what Jeff Jones was going to do is what coaches always do in these situations. I don't have timeout. I got a free throw shooter at the line. I'm going to put a sub at the scorer's table so that I can stop the clock essentially after the second free throw and set my defense, kind of get everybody situated, and then we're ready to play the last play. No one missed the first free throw, but Jeff Jones has Willie Dirsch at the scorer's table, ready to check in after the second free throw, assuming Norman makes the free throw, which he does. So Nolan makes the second free throw. Virginia's up 61-60, 4.8 seconds to go. The scorer's table starts sounding the horn, which is the signal to the officials that, hey, we got to check in the game. The officials don't stop play. They let Duke inbound the ball. Virginia's players are standing because they're waiting for Willie Dirsch to check in the game. And Steve Wojciechowski, the point guard, who's now what he's the former head coach now at Marquette. Steve Wojciechowski gets the inbounds pass and streaks up the court. And Virginia is Willie Dirsch is checking in. Somebody's checking out. Obviously, it'll be Norman Nolan checking out. He's checking in for the shooter. And mass confusion. The scorer's table is sounding the horn more. Continued confusion. Clock doesn't start. Wojciechowski finally gets fouled by one of the Virginia players in the front court, leading to a 1-and-1 situation for Duke. In the confusion, the clock starts, and after it's all settled, the clock is drained of time, and Steve Wojciechowski makes the 2 free throws. Virginia loses. The ACC, now, so I'm getting back to so that's the setting, and then the ACC last night issued a statement about Virginia benefiting from a bad call. In 1997, 2 days after that game, Gene Corrigan, then the commissioner of the ACC, issued a statement apologizing for the bad calls there. So it's not unprecedented, to say the least, that the ACC issues a statement after a bad call at the end of a game, and it's not just to protect Duke last night. In fact, the ACC not only admonished its officials, sat them out a game. That crew did not work a game. They lost an assignment as a result of that, losing pay for them. But I remember, whether this was unofficial or it was official talk, that Virginia team I mentioned was on the bubble. It was said at the time, and I've not found any confirmation of this online. So I'm saying what I remember from the time, that the tournament selection committee was basically advised not to hold that loss against Virginia. In essence, because of the ACC's apology, consider that a no contest. And Virginia, in fact, got an NCAA tournament bid with a 7-9 league record, 18-12 overall, lost in the first round of the ACC tournament. As it turned out, they didn't do much with it. They lost in the first round of the NCAA tournament as well. But the NCAA did not hold the loss against them as they were considering Virginia's resume for the NCAA tournament. So that's a pretty strong way to do it. We are apologizing, and we're not going to count this loss against you. Unofficially, I bet the same thing happens to Duke. Not only obviously the ACC's apologized. I'm pretty sure these officials will at least get one game docked against them from an assignment. But Duke will get the same consideration Virginia got 26 years ago in terms of the NCAA tournament.
Difference in being docked now and being docked and reprimanded and suspended for a game is back in 97, officials were affiliated with a conference.
That's right.
Now they're free agents. So it's not uncommon for the top officials to work 3, 4, 5 games a week. One worked 6 early January. I saw it on Twitter, and they showed his travel schedule. He was East Coast, West Coast, East Coast, Middle America in 6 days, 6 straight games. So
these guys will just pick up a job in the MAC or something that
right.
night.
So they're not going to really
yeah
lose a lot of money. No, don't shed any tears over how much money they might be out.
And which, hey, who knows if that doesn't factor? And when they're standing there looking at the TV monitor last night, who knows if that doesn't factor into them thinking, hey, let's right the wrong. We're going to get suspended, but we'll just work, in the Sun Belt for that night.
Yeah, exactly. So the other thing, I made a note before we went on. Let's look at this from both sides.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, if you're a Duke fan and you're complaining about the officiating, taking how they handled the last play,
mm-hmm.
and you don't take into consideration the missed 5-second call,
right?
How horrible Duke played in overtime, how Duke's big men, all dapper Dans, right? Were just MIA last night. Then you're not complaining about the officials. You're just mad because your team lost.
Yeah.
Flip the script. UVA fans, if we'd lost that game last night on that call, if that call had not been overturned and Filipkowski went and made one, all he needed to make was one.
One.
He didn't have to make 2, and it was 2 shots. So
yeah,
free bacon or not. There was I wouldn't go as far as Shire said. There's no doubt that he would make the shots. I would say that there was probably little doubt that he couldn't make 1 or 2.
Right.
But if you're a Virginia fan, are you really going to be that blindsided and say that cost us, or are you going to be objective and say we were 9 of 22 from the free throw line? We were woeful from behind the 3-point line. Doesn't that work both ways?
Well, 39-24 rebound. And Virginia
39-24 rebound.
Virginia was 3 of 12 at the line at that moment. And it would have really, it still would have hurt to have Filipkowski score 1 point in the game, and that 1 point be the one that won the game on a series of bad calls. But yeah, you had every opportunity to win the game.
It would have hurt, but you would have had to, if you're a real true fan, you would have had to look at this and say, my gosh, we played a horrible game, really. And we still could have won, but
should have won. Well,
should have won.
I will say this: the tacos tasted a lot better last night after
they were.
Overtime played it.
These things even out.
They even out. Well,
they even out.
And it took 26 years for them to even out, Scott. That's the thing here. And
I think the bigger statement here, is the statement that the ACC made, and I love the final comment, was basically end of discussion.
We consider the case closed. End of discussion. Yeah.
End of discussion. In other words, get over it, Duke.
Yeah. And Duke,
Sorry, get over it. You've had 40 years of, for the majority, overwhelming majority, you've been on the good side of this curve.
yeah,
And now you're on the wrong end of it. But more importantly, now the officials are showing the rest of the conference, the rest of the college basketball, we're not going to be bullied. We're not going to let one coach dictate that much have that much control over the ebb and flow of a game.
yeah, and that's clearly that call. That game last night, the way it was officiated, it wouldn't have come down to one play if there's a Coach K on the sidelines. Jeremy Roach doesn't foul out with 3:11 to go on a few offensive fouls. They're calling Kihei Clark for some of those fouls. I mean, it's just Coach K. Things were different under Coach K, and it's fine. It's what it is. We can't. It's water under the bridge.
Chris, he's a Hall of Fame coach. Okay, let's give him credit. He's a Hall of Fame coach.
He's a Hall of Fame coach. Yeah. He won 3 gold medals for the U.S. We actually rooted for him then.
But if you can't honestly say he was able to dictate a lot of games, dictate the flow, dictate the way the game was officiated, then you weren't paying much attention the last 40 years. On this podcast I watched this morning, it's called The Field of 68. It's hosted by Tyler Hansborough. He was asked, would that call have been overturned if Coach K was on the sideline? And Hansborough said, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Hansborough was in a few of those fist fights with Duke, and literally got his nose broken in one of those games with Duke.
He said the officials would have never, they just wouldn't have. And he didn't get into he didn't elaborate on it, but his answer was absolutely not.
Well, he didn't need to. Anybody who's not a Duke fan, especially a fan of an ACC school who's not a Duke fan, knows that Duke fans know that's the case. They got those calls for all those years. It's kind of like I wrote a column this afternoon saying, I mean, Duke has walked around for 40 years, and their fans have walked around for 40 years expecting those calls to go their way, and not apologizing for those calls. Tony Bennett after the game last night, it was as sheepish as you've ever heard a coach who benefited from a call. It's almost like he was apologizing. What I'm suggesting to UVA fans is just, let's just own it. At least last night we were the bad guys. As far as every damn news organization was concerned who covers sports, ESPN's headline, the Athletics headline, CBS Sports, Yahoo Sports. All of them having writers bemoaning this awful call that cost Duke the game. We're the heels now. I'm a wrestling guy. One of these things back here behind me is got some wrestling insignia with it. Let's be the bad guys here. Heck yeah. I mean, let's embrace it. Let's lean into it a little bit here. If because Tony Bennett, it's been his league for a while. Let's just be honest about that. And the rest of the world hasn't realized that, but you know who does realize it and who recognized it last night with a statement at about 11:50 p.m. Eastern time, and that's the ACC. That statement, more than anything to me, Scott, was the ACC saying, it's Tony Bennett's conference now.
Yeah, absolutely. And get over it, Duke.
Get over it, Duke.
Get over it. But Tony's not going to let you know that it's his conference. He's not going to let you know that.
Because humility is the first of the 5 pillars. And it's kind of like I said,
we'll let you know that.
We'll let you know. It reminds me. So Scott, I'll go back to my wrestling analogy for a second. There's a guy you actually may know the name, Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle was an Olympic gold medal winning actual amateur wrestler, and then he transitioned to the pro wrestling business. And when he first was in the pro wrestling business, Vince McMahon tried to make him he's a gold medal winning wrestler. He won the gold medal literally with a broken neck. He had broken his neck in the U.S. trials. He won the gold medal with a broken neck. What you can't imagine. You can't cast a better babyface top guy in your territory. So he sends him out there, and Kurt Angle wears the gold medal around his neck, and he's talking about how he won the gold. He won the gold with a broken neck, and how hard he trained, and all this stuff. And fans started to hate him because he was too virtuous. And you look at where our society, that was 20 plus years ago. You look at where our society is now, and people hate good people. We seem to value like the Kardashians in our world, who are just the worst absolute people in the world. They take and take and take, and all, they sleep around, they do drugs, they're everything about them screams awful. But we value that now. And the people like Kurt Angle, the people like Tony Bennett. I mean, Tony Bennett's been getting booed for years, not just in the ACC. The national basketball writers hate Tony Bennett's style of basketball. It's boring. Schools recruited against Tony, saying you'll never go to the NBA if you play for Tony Bennett, even though he's got 12 guys in the NBA now, because his style is boring. And, there's no way he's that nice. I wrote in the column, Duke Basketball Report already has his 72-point banner with World War II just ended headline ready for the next time Tony, or the first time Tony gets a freaking parking ticket. They're just waiting for something to show that this guy is not as good as he is, and that those guys that he recruits are not as good as they are. They're waiting for that first little pebble of something to give them something to say, oh, see, Tony Bennett's like everybody else. People hate, in this day and age, we hate good people. Let's lean into it. Let's be the good people who actually get guys who go to class. Duke's guys go to class for 6 weeks. Kyrie Irving believes the earth is flat. If that's what you want to claim as your big alum in the NBA, he anti-vaxxer, anti-Semite, and that's the guy you want to brag about going to your school. Coach K turned Duke from an academic institution into a warehouse of one and done dumbasses who come there, get their blessing from Coach K, and leave school after the spring break and go to the NBA. So yeah, let's be the goody two shoes that everybody hates, because heck with it. The ACC's ours now, bitch. If you don't like it, recognize. That's my wrestling promo there for you, Scott.
Yeah, Chris, you really need to just tell us what's on your mind and quit beating around the bush about it.
It could be that, I mentioned that I was up really late writing last night. And so I think I've had 4 Diet Dr. Peppers this morning, plenty of caffeine. So, but there you go.
It'll be interesting to see how the polls treat us this week. If you weren't watching yesterday or following the scores, I think there was at least a couple of upsets of teams ahead of us.
Yeah,
Tennessee lost.
Right?
Arizona got upset last night by Stanford, a bad Stanford team.
And where this matters is, I mean, you and I have talked about this a lot between airings, but we'll talk about it now here as we're recording. I mean, our eyes are now. I mean, yeah, you got to win every game. Don't overlook Louisville, even though Louisville's awful, et cetera, et cetera. Louisville played decent last night, losing at Miami by 8, so that's actually as well as they can play. But so value your opponents, respect your opponents. That said, Virginia's. I mean, yeah, double bye. That's pretty much not sewn up, but it's sewn up in the ACC tournament. But what you're really playing for is you want to be in Greensboro
the following weekend.
Yeah, and then you want to be in position that if you win 2 games there, you're in New York for the regional weekend. So, winning last night keeps you on track for that. Maybe even gives you a boost in that sense. Go out and win some more games. Go down to Greensboro, win some games, and then you're playing again in Greensboro, 3 hours down the road. We know, Scott, UVA fans travel to Greensboro. That place in 2014 for the ACC tournament final against Duke that year. There was
JPJ South.
Yeah, there were more people in there wearing orange than there would be in JPJ, just because Greensboro Coliseum is a little bit bigger. And it was a home crowd for Virginia that day. So we love Greensboro. We traveled well to New York in the Sweet 16 in 2014. There were as many people in Madison Square Garden as there usually are in JPJ rooting for UVA. So,
tickets are a little more accessible, believe it or not, because tickets to JPJ aren't always, it's a pretty much season ticket holder thing.
Season ticket holders who donate a lot of money, and then Madison Square Garden's a little bigger, and it's only a 6-hour train ride. It's not. It's very convenient to get to New York, and that from Charlottesville, you just get on the train in Charlottesville. You get off the train right there at Madison Square Garden. You're literally in the arena when you get off the train.
Yeah. So rankings do mean something.
They do. I mean,
the rankings,
the computer numbers, they all mean something. Yeah. And so we're playing now for style points. And we need to rack up those style points. That win last night as a result is huge in that respect.
Chris, we both know with the 2018 season, we played in Charlotte, which is not that far much further from Greensboro, but it is.
Yeah.
And then in 2019, we played a little further south,
Columbia.
Yeah. We know how important it is to have as many of your fans in the arena as possible, because both of those games turned out to be the entire arenas were against us.
Oh yeah, certainly the UMBC game turned against us, and then so that night, the night the bad thing happened, I will always refer to it as. There weren't a lot of UMBC fans there, but everybody else turned into UMBC fans, and then the next year, Gardner Webb brought some people. I think everybody who ever went to Gardner Webb was in the arena.
It was literally 50 miles away, I believe.
Well, the I think it's an hour or hour and a half or something like that. But they came in. I mean, that day Virginia's game was second in that session. I think it was Ole Miss and Oklahoma in the first game.
Yes.
And nobody was in the arena for that game until about halftime. And then you start seeing
filled up
with people wearing red and black, which is Gardner Webb's colors. I'm like, damn, this is a road game. And it's a loud road game too. I mean, and they got out to that 16-point lead. That place was rocking. That was the bad thing that almost happened, part two. And because Columbia is what, a 6-hour drive away. Charlotte's a 5-hour drive from Central Virginia. Greensboro's a 3-hour drive from Central Virginia. We fill up Greensboro. We fill up Raleigh. It's asking a little bit more to go further south. So yeah, it's important to get to Greensboro. We need to win some more games. Last night was key to that, because that keeps us on track to Greensboro Part 2. Greensboro Part 1's a given. Greensboro Part 2 is what we're really playing for here. And so thank you, ACC, for your officials getting it right. They almost got it wrong twice. They got it right, and they kept us on track to where we need to be.
There's a country music song about getting it wrong. I can't remember the title of it. I will since we finish. I don't know, but they did. By getting it wrong twice, they were able to correct it. And I'm sorry,
two wrongs made a right here.
Two wrongs made a right, and I'm sorry it didn't go in Duke's favor last night, but it did not decide the game. The game did not end at that moment.
Virginia still had to go out and win the game. Yeah, that did not gift Virginia the game.
And clearly Duke came out of that 3-minute huddle very unmotivated and unprepared.
Yeah.
And whatever took place in the Duke huddle obviously didn't factor in their play. And whatever, I think Tony addressed it in the press conference. He never really went to the scores table. He pretty much group huddled with his team and just kind of hoped that was the outcome.
Yeah.
So he was preparing them for that, and then and it was obvious.
That's just because he's a goody two shoes. He's not going to go try to tell the referees how to call the game.
Right. He was also preparing his son Sunday school program, Sunday school lesson for the next day. What I heard,
he wasn't threatening the referees' future employment. He wasn't letting them know that the next time they call a game is going to be at the JV level. He's doing his job. It's such a breath of fresh air. He was coaching his team, not coaching the ACC people, which is what the other guy used to do for 40 years. Bad news is good news for John Shire is, I mean, it's also bad news. The Duke name still lures top recruits to Durham. And so he's got the #1 recruiting class coming in for this coming year's recruiting cycle. The bad news for John Shire is, as much as he inherited Coach K's recruiting good name, he didn't recruit Coach K's ownership of the ACC. He's going to have to go out there and actually win games on his own. And so that's going to take some time.
Yeah. And whether Duke fans will give him enough time, that verdict is still to be determined.
Well,
same across town or down the road a little bit in Chapel Hill with Hubert Davis.
Hubert, yeah, you know that both those programs, those once storied programs, are definitely going to have, they're in adjustment phases, and but as far as Duke's concerned, yeah, they and Shire last night, and I'll also give Coach K this as a coach. He would have motivated the hell out of his guys in that 3-minute huddle, but he also would have had a couple of X's and O's that would have helped him out too. I haven't seen that out of John Shire. I haven't seen any development out of those players that were a top recruiting class this year. We talked about this earlier. I don't see anybody on that roster that screams. I mean, there were a lot of NBA where we were sitting last night. For the people out there listening, we Scott and I and Lawrence actually just gave ourselves seats on press row. We were assigned different seats spread out all over the place. Scott didn't even have a seat because there's no respect there. But he was able to be in the arena. So we just sat on the top of press row, literally out there at the concourse level. But we were a row behind where all the NBA scouts were. And I felt sorry for the NBA scouts because if they were there to watch, Duke one and dones, I would think that one and done has a different connotation for those guys. There was nobody there for those guys to watch. I mean, they might have been there more to watch Reese Beekman. And if they were there to watch Reese Beekman, they saw something out of a little supposedly 5'10" point guard named Kihei Clark that might make them say, we're not going to draft that guy, but he needs an invite to camp. Kihei Clark owned the lane last night. 5'10" guy owned the lane last night. He was otherworldly with his drives to the basket.
If I'm an NBA scout, I'm going to go back to my GM, and I'm going to say we need to give him a free agent invite to the camp, and we're going to tell him we're doing this, kid, because we really feel sorry for you. We don't think you have a shot in hell, but we just want you to have the experience of being in it summer in a camp. And then all of a sudden you may see Muggsy Bogues.
He got the first offensive possession of the game for Virginia, if I'm recalling it right. He took it right at Dariqa Whitehead, the guy who had all the block shots against Carolina, 8 block shots against Carolina. Took it right at him. Supposedly 5'10". He was 5'9". Now he's grown an inch. Now he's and I don't even think he's 5'9", but whatever. He's not 5'10". He's 5 something. He took it right at the 7'1" guy. And so Whitehead had eight blocks against Carolina, averaged 5 blocks a game his last 4. He had 0 last night. And that was with Kihei taking him to the rim. It was with Armand Franklin, 6'4", taking him to the rim. Virginia was 19 of 28 at the rim last night. And Mr. Rim Protector got nothing. He got 0 blocks. Filipowski was supposedly going to be a lottery pick. So Whitehead got 0 blocks. Filipowski got 0 points. Yeah.
Derek Lively was a non-factor last night after.
I'm sorry. Lively's the guy that had the blocks. I misquoted myself. Got to correct myself.
And I mean, it's funny how the media can just spin this to make a player look. The Carolina game, you would have thought Derek Lively was the second coming of Michael Jordan, and he had his coming out game.
Yeah.
Since then, he's had 2 games of just MIA.
Yeah. And getting beat by a little kid. When Kihei Clark showed up on his recruiting visit at UVA, Isaiah Wilkins famously, Kihei showed up with his mom and dad and little brother, and Isaiah Wilkins, who's now a coach on the UVA staff, was a player then. He famously said when he saw Kihei and his little brother standing there together, he said, "Which one of them is Kihei?" So he let that kid take him to school.
And I believe Kihei brings out the best in players. Wasn't there a Ty Jerome story where Ty Jerome got mad at him at a pickup game and basically threw a ball off his head?
Threw a bat. He got so mad because Kihei got up under him so much when they were playing.
You're not supposed to guard in a pickup game, right?
Yeah, and he threw the basketball at his head, and that's. I mean, I remember Scott. Gosh, the first time Kihei got on the court in his first game that year. What the hell is Tony playing this little kid for? He played 24 minutes or something like that first night. And, that we got all these guys. We got Ty Jerome and Kyle Guy and DeAndre Hunter, and he's playing this little guy. What the hell is that little guy doing? And then there's a banner hanging up there.
That wouldn't be hanging up there
without that little guy.
Clark.
Yeah. Without the guy who wasn't the little brother up there. And yeah, he's not going to get drafted, no doubt. But it would not shock me if he's not on an NBA roster at the start of next season because he'll play his way. If that NBA team, Scott, uses the approach you just suggested, hey, we're just inviting you to give you a taste of it. K.A. Clark will get so pissed off that he will make a team. That's all it takes. That's all.
Yeah.
That
You
guy
just
just
give
needs an
him,
ounce of motivation.
give him a reason why he can't succeed.
Exactly, and he will do it. He is a one-man full court press. He is everything, and so he was the one who starred last night. Armand Franklin obviously had a big game too. 23 points, nice bounce back game for him. 23 points on 9 of 13 shooting. Needed that from him. If those scouts were there to watch anybody, they might have been there to watch certain guys. They left impressed with the UVA kids who are boring, play boring basketball, do all the fundamental things right, go to class. The boring kids, the bad guys these days because we're boring.
Yeah. The blue blood versus the blue collar teams.
There you go. All right. So anything else, Scott? We have vented a good bit here. I hope we've given the UVA fans out there some ammunition, if nothing else.
No, I think that, there's always that. I look at the glasses, not only is it half full or half empty, but it's got a damn crack in it that no one sees but me.
Yeah. Yeah. I know this well. Yes.
I don't take anything for granted, but I do think Virginia is not. I think Coach Bennett will use something. He'll use a lot of things out of the Duke game to motivate them in practice the next couple of days. I don't think there's going to be a letdown at Louisville, but I'm telling you, this is a tough conference.
Yeah,
it's getting a little, dent up a little bit because I think the reason that it's getting hit on so much about being down is because Carolina Duke's not getting all the publicity. Well, the conference is strong. There's so many teams until you get to the very bottom where it is weak with Louisville and Georgia Tech. The rest of the conference on any given night, we've seen it. Tech beats UVA. You take Georgia Tech and Duke or Louisville out of the mix.
And Notre Dame. Take Notre Dame out too.
And Notre Dame. Then you got 12 teams that are going to battle one another. And I think the Louisville game will be a little more difficult than we think. I really do.
They played well against I have to break it down, but they lost by 8 at Miami. You got to respect everybody. They still recruit Louisville level athletes.
This is their Super Bowl.
It's their chance to their NCAA tournament game because they're not obviously at 3-21 not going to make one, so they have one chance to do something to shock the world. This is it. I'll have a breakdown. I'll look more in depth at Louisville's numbers, internals, and that kind of thing, and I'll do my best because I do this. Scott talked about how he's the one who finds the crack in the half in the glass that's also half empty. I'm a guy when I write the previews, I really do try to find the danger in an opponent because there's danger in every opponent. We know that because that's ingrained in us since UMBC, but there's danger in every opponent. You can't overlook anybody. And
if you were in the arena for the UMBC game and you ever make a statement that this was a gimme, then you weren't at that game.
You weren't at that game and you have not, you have somehow suppressed the horror that we all felt that night.
You watched that on TV and you turned it off and started drinking heavily at about the 8-minute mark when you knew the game was over. You weren't there and had to endure what we watched the UMBC guys go crazy, the fans, and then had to sit through the most agonizing post-game press conference I've ever been a part of.
Yeah, that's always there. That's the seeds of 2019. They were planted in 2018 in a very painful way. But yeah, as a result, we respect every opponent, and they deserve respect. So anyway, that game is midweek this week. What is it? Is Notre Dame the home game on the weekend, Scott?
Yeah, Notre Dame is Saturday at 12.
So another one that on paper should be a easy game for Virginia, but we will not look at it that way. Nate Laszewski had 33 points last night for Notre Dame in a loss to Virginia Tech. Oh, there's always something out there. So anyway, we'll preview those games, and I'm sure Scott and I'll get back together this week as well. Well, for Scott German, I am Chris Graham signing off. If you have anything for us to look at in the near future, email me at Chris. I was getting ready to say Scott at Chris@AugustaFreePress.com.